In this video, I'll demonstrate how to listen to Stripe Webhook events with a NextJS 15 application. So in the previous video, I created a simple online bookstore where the user can see a book for sale. They can click on the purchase button, and then here they get redirected to the Stripe checkout page. Then once they enter in all their information, they can pay, the payment gets processed, and then they return back to our online bookstore and see a payment successful message. If you want the full details on how this was implemented, you can see the previous video. Now, suppose that once the user successfully pays, that I want to send them an email. Maybe I want to send them an electronic version of the book, or maybe I want to add their transaction details to my own internal database, like maybe I have a loyalty program and I want to make sure that the user gets rewarded based on this purchase. I cannot do these actions from the front end or client side because it's very possible that the user may accidentally exit out of this page after going through the Stripe checkout process. I have to perform these actions on the server side. But now, how does my server-side code know when the user has successfully paid? Well, this is where we can leverage the power of Stripe Webhook events. Stripe events are events that occur whenever something happens to your Stripe account. For example, I'll show you all the Stripe events that occur in my demo application. So here on the left, I have a terminal, and it's listening to all Stripe events locally. I'll explain later how to set this up, but for now I just want to show an example of Stripe events in action. So I'm going to go back to the home page of the bookstore. I'll click on Purchase button. Here I'm in the Stripe checkout page. I'm going to pay. And then look on the left, you can see a few things have popped up in the terminal. And these are all the different Stripe events that have happened. First, there's a charge succeeded, checkout session completed, payment intent succeeded, payment intent created, and then finally a charge updated. So in this simple example of going through the checkout page and submitting my payment, we have encountered all these different Stripe events. Now, if you want more information on all the possible Stripe events, you can go to docs.stripe.com/API/events. And here you can see all the different events that Stripe has. All right, so let's talk about how to actually get this set up with the NextJS 15 application. So the first step is to install the Stripe CLI. We need the Stripe CLI because we want to locally test our application with Stripe events. To install the CLI, we go to docs.stripe.com/stripe-CLI. We can see how to install the Stripe CLI. So you can pick the step based on your operating system. Once you've installed the CLI, then go to a brand new terminal, and the first command we'll do is stripe a login. It's going to ask you to press enter to open a browser, so press enter. Now, if it's your first time doing Stripe login, you may get asked to enter your username and password, but since I've already logged in, I don't get that input form. But now you can see here, it's asking me to verify the pairing code. So there's some phrase here, and I need to ensure that it's the same phrase that I see in my terminal. And I can confirm that the pairing code is the same in my terminal and in the browser. So I'll click on Allow Access. Next, I want to start listening to Stripe events. To do this, I'll use the stripe listen command, and then I want to forward all the events to an API route in my Next.js 15 application. So I'll use the forward-2 parameter, and then I have to give the path to the API route. So for me, it is this path. And I'll show the content of this API route a little bit later. Next, you'll see a webhook signing secret. You want to copy this and then set this as an environment variable in your Next.js 15 application. So here I go to my .env.local. I'm going to create a new environment variable called Stripe Webhook Secret, and I'll paste the new value. Next, let's look at how we're processing the Stripe events. So if you remember in the Stripe command, when I'm listening, I'm forwarding all of the events to this API route. That's at API/Stripe/webhook. So this is where my server-side API route is stored. So here in my code editor, I go to source, app, API/Stripe/webhook, and here is my route.js. So this route.js is in charge of handling all the Stripe events. So the code here is pretty simple. We're first going to ensure that we have the Stripe webhook secret environment variable. Then we're going to take in the body request that Stripe sends us, pair it with our signature and environment variable. Then we can have our own custom logic to perform different actions based on the event type. So for example, in my application, I want to do something if the user has successfully paid. So according to the Stripe documentation, the way to check this is if the event type is checkout.session.completed, or if the event type is checkout.session.async payment succeeded. So if I see either of these event types, then I know that the payment was successful. So here I'm just printing out a log message saying payment successful, but maybe here I could also send an email or add a record into my database. I could do whatever I want. So to confirm that our server-side route is working as expected, we'll go through the checkout process one more time. So I'll go to the home page. I will click to purchase the book. I'm going to enter my details and pay. And then if I go back here into my terminal, you can see that I get this payment successful message and then the body of the event. So that's what we're doing here in line 21. We're printing payment successful, and then you can see the entire body of the event. Another thing I want to mention is that this webhook gets executed every time there is a Stripe event. So if you remember going back to the documentation here of Stripe events, Stripe has hundreds of different events that Stripe will send out. Now in here, we're running our app locally, so it's fine to listen for all events. But in a production environment, you don't want to listen to all events because your webhook route will constantly get executed, and this can get expensive. So the solution for this is that when you set up your webhook, you want to only listen to specific events. To do this, we'll go to our Stripe dashboard. That's dashboard.stripe.com. And in the bottom left, you click on Developers, click on Webhooks. And here, this is where you can create your production webhooks. So we'll click on Add Destination. And then here you can specify which events you want your webhook to listen to. So maybe I only care about checkout events. So when the checkout session is completed, or when the async payment was succeeded. And then I press on Continue. And then here you can specify the details for your production API route. But the benefit of doing this is now your webhook is only going to listen for these selected events. It's going to ignore all other events like invoices, identity, issuing card. Now your webhook will be much more efficient because it's only listening to events that you care about.